Welcome everyone, this is Andrew Sampson with Ross Video, and today we're going to walk you through some of the new features that have been added to the Datalinq feature set in Expression, namely the ability to work with multiple tables inside an individual Datalinq source. So we're going to go all the way from configuring our database into adding the data source and then eventually linking our templates inside of Expression. So to start with, we have an Excel file that we've created, and it has a few different tables already added to it. We have season stats, game stats, and headshots. These have already been added as separate tables. I'm going to add a fourth table, which is going to be my roster table, and to do that, we're just going to highlight the fields that we want to save as the table. We'll give it a name, which will be roster, and we'll go ahead and save that as our table. Now, in order to make changes to the Excel file and have them show up inside your Datalinq, inside of Expression simultaneously, and to be able to access this Excel file from Expression while being able to make changes from within Excel, you have to share this database file so that multiple applications can access it simultaneously. So we're also going to go to the Review tab here in Excel, and we're going to go to Share Workbook, and we're going to allow changes. And click OK. All right, so we're ready to go. Next up, we're going to add our Excel file as a database to Datalinq Server. So we're going to open up Datalinq Server, which is already running. We're going to click Add New, and you'll notice that there's a new source inside the Datalinq Server that you can choose now, and it's the ADODB tables Datalinq source. And this is what's going to allow us to use multiple tables within a single Datalinq source. So we're going to pick this Datalinq type, and we're going to start configuring this. The first step is to select the correct template. So when you click the Select Template button, it's going to bring up this interface where you can pick an appropriate template from the drop-down menu, and you'll see a variety of different database templates in here. For instance, Access, and then of course Excel, which is the one that we are going to want to use in this particular case. So we're going to grab the Excel template, click OK, and where it says Data Source, we're going to insert the file path for our Excel file. So we're just going to paste it in there. There we go. There's a test connection button also so that you can test the connection between Datalinq Server and the data file that you're adding before you actually start working within Expression itself. So we'll go ahead and test the connection. It says connection successfully established, so we are good to go. Click OK, and we'll add this. And I'm going to add this Datalinq source, and we're going to give it a name called, I don't know, roster. Sure. So we're all set. We can go ahead and close the Datalinq server or minimize it and go ahead and start working inside of Expression. So we're going to use this lower third template as our example, and we're going to start data linking the different fields, including the headshot, to the Excel file that we've created. A few steps that still remain the same. You're going to have to establish a connection between Expression and your Datalinq server. So we're going to go up to the Datalinq manager, and we're going to add a Datalinq server. Link server 1. My server is running locally, so host address is localhost. And we'll click OK. And we'll see the Datalinq source that I've added once we establish a connection to the server. So that is all set, and we can go ahead and start working on our graphic. So much of this process remains the same in the sense that we're going to select objects and we're going to link them to appropriate fields in the database. But we'll start introducing some new concepts as this demonstration goes along. So of course, the first thing we're going to want to do is link the name for our player. So we'll select that text object. We'll go to Data Source, select Datalinq, and we'll go ahead and set this. And we'll pick from roster, and we will browse. Now here's the big difference. Because we have a file that contains multiple tables, and we're using that new Datalinq source, we actually have the ability to switch between the different tables contained within that file. So if I want to pick from the roster table, I can select roster, and it's going to give me my jersey numbers, my age, my weight, and my player names. And of course, I can then switch to my game stats, and it's going to give me the game stats, and I can switch to season stats, and I get the season stats. All from within a single Datalinq source. We have access to all these different tables. So a very handy organizational tool when you're creating your data files. So we'll go ahead and select roster, and we're going to go ahead and link our first name. And click OK. There's our first name. We'll go and we'll grab our first number. So again, we're going to go to our roster data file and go to the roster table. And we're going to select the jersey number. And then we're going to link our season stats across the bottom for goals, assists, and points. So we'll select goals, Datalinq, roster, and we're going to pick a different table. Instead of game stats, we're going to choose season stats, and we're going to pick goals, assists, and finally points. All right, so not huge changes in that regard, and we're still linking on an object basis inside of our scene. Now the big changes are going to start to come when we move this sequence over to, or move this template over to sequence and start making multiple take IDs out of it. The data source tab, if you will, or all the features you find within the data source tab are now available to the operator via the sequence interface, which previously we could not do. So if we move over to sequence, we're going to add this item to our sequence. I'll delete the one that's in there right now. I'm going to drop it in. And inside your template data, where you typically update your text fields, type in whatever information, change your headshots, things like that, you're going to find all of the fields that you have data linked, right? So we're going to see jersey, and we're going to see the data link properties for that. We're going to see name, data link properties for that, goals, etc., points, assists. And any one of these fields, you can now switch between what data you are inputting into that particular text object. So from within the sequence interface, you can switch from Datalinq to static text, and you can input whatever text you want, or you can switch back to Datalinq, or you can link it to a widget from within the sequence interface and from within the template data tab inside the sequencer. So if I want to change out the information on this particular graphic, there's some easy ways, and then there's some even easier ways to do this, and we'll sort of progress through the different steps and the different shortcuts we've added into the system to make this process a little bit easier. Most basic way we can do that is just change the row number. Now, since our data file that we're using basically just has all of our players, rows 1 through however many players may be in the roster, we can just change this value on a take item by take item basis to increment our data. So my player stats 1 scene, right? We're going to work on take ID 15. That'll be our first player. Actually, let's give it a different number. Let's call this guy 101. All right. Now we can go through all these different fields. These are all linked to row 1. Now if I make a duplicate of this take ID, we'll copy and paste. It's 102. We're going to go through the different data fields, and we're going to increment this row number to get us a different value from the database. So we're going to switch jersey to row 2. And you'll actually see inside the preview window, I'll expand this to make it a little easier to see, but as you change that record number, you change that row number, you'll see the information in the field change as well. So we'll go to name, we'll change the row to 2, and now we have a different name. We're going to go to goals, we'll change the row to 2, and we have a different name, etc. And of course, you can do this all from the interactive preview window as well. So if you click on the actual fields themselves, it'll bring you to the corresponding text object. So there you go. So there's our information for our next player. And of course, you can just keep repeating this process. So if we want to do the third player in the roster, copy and paste, and we'll go through and we'll change the row number on these to 3. We'll change the name to 3. We'll change goals to 3, and so on. So pretty straightforward. Now we can also link the player headshot, and I probably should have done this from the layout side, but just to show you sort of the flexibility, you can also set up your data link directly from sequence. So for an object that was not previously data linked in the template, you can actually data link it directly from the sequence side. So our player headshot, which is player photo, is currently set up to be manually replaced. It's a published object in our scene. But now from within sequence, because we have access to all of the different possibilities for this published object, I can switch it to data link. We can select roster, we can browse, we'll go find our headshots table, and then we'll link this to the correct player headshot. And there he is. And that can also be done from layout. So if we move back to the layout side, right? That can also have been preset into the template. Which brings us to another important change. Objects, well, quad objects specifically, now have a data source property directly inside the object inspector. So something that we've been able to do for a very long time is data link a material. But now you can data link a quad object from within your object inspector. So if we look at the player photo object and we go over to Datalink, which is the new tab, you'll see that there's a Datalink tab now in the object inspector, and we can set up a data link specifically for this object. And that can be saved now into the template. So there you have it. And if we were to add that template to our sequence again, of course, we'll have player photo material face is currently set up for a specific data link. And if we change the row number on the headshot, we get a different player photo. So exactly the same process for changing headshots as it would be for text fields. So this was pretty straightforward. It's fairly easy to do, but it can be even easier than that. We can set up what's called a data link key, which will allow us to change the record we're reading from our data file globally for the template. So the process we just went through, we're changing all of the fields. We're changing the row number for each field independently. But what if we just want to globally change the row that we're reading for this template and have all of the fields follow accordingly? Well, that's where we can set up what's called a data link key. So this is, again, something that we're going to do from the layout side. So we're going to switch back. We'll switch back to layout. And step one is creating our data link key. And to create a data link key, we have to do that from within the scene object. So just as a refresher, the scene object is the very top object in your object manager. Every scene is going to have a scene object, just by default. And that contains a bunch of global properties for the scene. And inside that scene object, in the object inspector, you're going to find a new tab called Data Link Keys to the far right. So we'll select Data Link Keys. And we're going to add a new data link key. Now, typically, in sports, one of the easiest ways to find the correct data, or one of the easiest ways for us to search for the correct information in our data file, is by the jersey number, because that's something that'll be unique to every player in the roster. They're all going to have a different jersey number. So we're going to use jersey as our data link key in this particular case. So inside our scene object, in the data link keys tab, we're going to go add, and we're going to give this data link key the name jersey. So next to the actual key name that you assign, you can set up a value as well. Now this is basically a default value because we're going to wind up changing this value to get our different records in this particular case. But you can put in a default value of 1 or a default value of 0, or you can insert macros, which we'll get to a little later on. But in this case, we're going to leave it blank, and we're going to change this value on an item-by-item basis from within the sequencer. So once you set up this data link key, we now have to associate all of the data links that we've created in our template to this data link key. So we've made a key called jersey, and I basically want all of these fields to follow my data link key jersey. So we have to create that association. So we're going to go to our name field, and we're going to go to the data source tab for it, and we're going to click the set button. And in the row field, instead of having row 1, we're going to put in %, jersey, %. All right, so we're basically connecting this data link field back to the data link key that we've created. We want the row to follow whatever value gets put into our data link key value. So we're going to do that for each data link field that we've created on this template. So click OK. We'll go to our next field, which is going to be our number. We'll go data link. Row will be % jersey %. And I'll copy this, make this process a little faster. And lastly, for our headshots. So data link row will be % jersey %. And if we change that data link key inside of layout, we should see the data increment. So if we go over to our Datalinq keys tab for the scene object and we input a value of 1, all right, we wind up getting all of the corresponding data for record 1. If we change the value to 2, we wind up getting all the corresponding data for value 2, because these are now all referencing back to that Datalinq key that we've created. The row is following the Datalinq key value. All right, so this is going to expedite the process that we just went through in sequence dramatically, because now instead of having to go through all of our individual fields, we can just drop the scene into sequence, change our Datalinq key value, and then we wind up with our new player headshot and our new corresponding data for that player. So we'll walk through that process again. We'll go into sequence, we'll create a new group, and we'll drop our scene into that group. And you'll see now inside the template data at the very top of all of your published fields, you've got your Datalinq key value. And currently it's reading value 2. So if I go ahead and change this, we copy and paste our take ID, and we change the Datalinq key to 3. You'll see the preview update globally, new stats, new name, new headshot. And again, you can just repeat this process over and over and over again. So that's using multiple tables and using Datalinq keys, some of the new features within Datalinq, which will hopefully make using Datalinq a much more enjoyable and much more easy process for a lot of you out there. So have fun with it, and you'll see these features in an upcoming release very soon.